when we were talking about the development, like kind of roadmap, we had a little bit of trouble defining like this process that you know very intimately for your own career.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to give you the opportunity to kind of explain this social listening sort of idea and how it's benefited you. So like the processes you've used in your own career that are relevant to this second training you'll be putting out.
Yeah. So
you are now listening to the Creative Juice podcast brought to you by Indepreneur.io.
What's up, Indies? Welcome back to your favorite podcast and mine, Creative Juice. And today's a bit of a special episode. I hope you guys are excited. I hope I'm in focus for video. I hope everything's copacetic because today we have very special guests. Ladies and gentlemen, basic printer, Jesse Gillen Walters. What's up, Jesse?
Hello, everybody. Hello, everyone out there.
The reason that we have Jesse here today and the reason that Corinne will be interviewing with Jack on next episode is because we've decided to do something a little bit differently this year when it comes to our flagship membership, INDIEPRO. And that is that we have basically marked out all of the trainings that we want to build this year and put into the INDIEPRO membership area in advance. So we've planned out our entire year of releases for our INDIEPRO members. And we're going to be announcing that training release schedule here on the podcast for you guys over the next 2 episodes. Who's excited? Are we pumped?
I am, for one.
I am psyched, dude.
I can't hold it in.
So the reason Jesse's here today is because you're going to get 2 trainings from myself, Corinne, Jack, and Jesse. I might be doing an extra training this year, but that's a significant step down from the 8 that I helped put out last year. And I'm very excited to be spreading the love. So we're going to talk about mine and Jesse's trainings, but I want to kick it off with Jesse's first training since it's pretty close to the fire. It should be coming out in the first half of this year. And that is selling tickets for, well, first of all, maybe I think appropriate to touch on before we actually get into that is that you actually haven't been on the podcast since we first brought you on the team, I don't think, right?
Well, I've had 2 episodes, one when I was not an employee,
right,
and one recently.
You were as the founder coach, right?
Yes. Precisely.
Yeah, but that's not all you've been doing. You've been working in the agency since day one on the team, right?
Yes. Since I've been here, I've been in the IndieX agency.
Hell yeah. So you've had a wealth of experience, not only marketing your own music, but also the music of our clients.
Exactly. All shapes and sizes. So
he's not creating trainings out of his ass, ladies and gentlemen. These are all based on his experience over these last, what is it? It's almost 6 months now.
Yes. Yeah.
That we've had you on the team. Yeah. So, okay. So that first training is going to be called Selling Tickets for Live Shows, the Redux.
That's right. The Redux.
Yeah. I'm very excited for this. So this is an update to a training that we released last year where we kind of compiled all the different strategies that we use at an agency level to sell tickets for live shows and in the testing grounds. And the reason that I'm so excited that you're doing this Redux is that you have been like boots on the ground for your own music career selling tickets for live shows. Is that correct?
Oh yeah. All the time. Been really iterating it pretty regularly for the past few years.
So yeah, there's like a lot of new information that's going to come to this training because of all the testing and validating that Jesse's done for himself, his friends in the local music scene, and for his clients. So tell me a little bit about kind of what kind of stays the same from the last training and then what you hope to introduce.
Yeah. So what's great about the current training is that it's really fully fledged. Like we touch on kind of a little bit of every single little asset that you could think of, employing in a show marketing context, which is really awesome. So that's, I'll be building off of that kind of groundwork and those kind of keywords, so to speak. But having used them a lot in Nashville specifically, which is really kind of a weird market, I've learned a lot of exceptions. For example, like a Facebook events campaign, it behaves a lot differently, I think, in different markets, and the cost of an event response really means totally different things. What could be expensive in one context is not expensive in another. So I'm really interested to bring some of that clarity and explain some of those exceptions to the tools we already kind of lay out for everyone.
Yeah, and you and I actually worked on marketing, selling tickets for your tour when you were a founder. Yeah. So that we definitely learned, there's a lot we had to adjust on the fly. And that first go of it was kind of like there was successes and failures, and it was kind of a wash in terms of what we were able to do. But I think, have those lessons served you since then?
Oh, absolutely. That was super fun, by the way. That was really just a great foray into that whole thing. But yeah, it's a really, selling tickets for live shows as a practice is such a tricky thing. There's not a lot of sticking points. There's not a lot to hold on to. You're kind of on quicksand all the time. It could be, it could go one way, it could go the other. And I feel like with us, that was kind of more of the same. We had some good ideas. They popped off in some contexts, and they didn't really even, kick up in other contexts. But I think a lot of it, and what I hope to bring to the training with the updates, is trying to extract the culture of the locale for one, but also sort of the moment, or kind of creating your own culture of the moment and around that show, using creative and using videos and things to try to sort of rein that in and have some clairvoyance about where things can go based on reactions to the assets you put forth.
Yeah. Speaking of assets, and this is one thing that I kind of find myself I don't say it too often, but I frequently want to say it, but I just know it won't be entirely helpful to those who haven't been through it before. But when people ask how do I make sure that X release or X marketing campaign goes off really well? What can I do to give it that extra 10%? And usually the answer for that is go above and be treat it with the seriousness that you would if you were a network, or if you were if you were a big corporation, treat it with that level of seriousness, or a big brand. To just if you want to make a marketing campaign perform really well, kind of take big risks,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And that doesn't always pan out. Sometimes, it's a lot of frustration, but I think for you, it's really panned out. And that's why the reason that you talking about assets reminded me of that is because of your assets. When you market these local shows, you've been making these epic trailers to local shows that you've been curating.
Yeah.
And to kind of tell me about that, and what, did that was that strategy born of a moment of genius, or just sort of a trend you'd been noticing? And then what has been the impact?
Well, I had done kind of a few of these kind of silly little videos that were, as you say, kind of trailers to the show, kind of announcement videos, kind of fusing our Fan Finder principles. And to those who don't know, our Fan Finder training, it's kind of a video marketing strategy we employ. I was kind of taking cues from that and seeing okay, what kind of caption and what kind of narrative can I put into the short video that would basically guide someone through all of the details of the show and keep them entertained and get them pumped about it. And I was doing a few kind of little skits that were not super robust in the past, but what had happened was I had a show with my friend Michael from the band Kaitoon, and he also makes synth music, and he wanted to do an acoustic show with just me and him. And so he's a videographer, and he had the idea of doing one of these videos that he'd seen me do before. And so we worked on that together, and that was kind of the start of it upping in value, because he has all this editing experience and he has these great cameras.
He has a GH5.
Yes, he does. So then after...
Shout out to Panasonic.
Totally. After that, it was just like, all right, we whipped this up so easily, and like the turnaround was amazing, and your edits were crazy. Like, I'm just going to do this every time, and I'm going to be working with you. I'm going to be asking you for these all the time. And so it's become kind of a healthy habit of ours to make these videos ahead of every show.
And that kind of backs up like one of our recent episodes when we were talking about full stack creative, is that like, it's not unreasonable for you to spend like a lot of time becoming sick at video, because it just is like a meta skill. It like serves so many things you could want to do.
Absolutely.
If you know how to turn around like an edit and like a dope shoot, like the world's at your fingertips, you know?
Oh yeah. That's absolutely true.
For sure. So, okay. So when it comes to selling tickets for live shows, is there anything else that you would like to kind of like prepare indies for, or kind of reassure them about?
Yeah, I would say, I think I'm going to bring an emphasis to email for this training as well. And I found that, if at the end of your campaign or your efforts, you wind up with 5 emails for a specific cold market, like that is your coal bed, and that's in many ways, that's almost the goal. Given our options for acquiring leads for shows, it's like, event responses and kind of page views on ticket pages. If you're not getting sales, obviously sales are the ultimate goal, but there's again just a lot of confounding kind of ethereal variables when it comes to this, and I found that email leads are a really good kind of sticking point in all of this. So be on the lookout for that.
So yeah, like if you're just starting out there, I think like we're gonna come back to you with an emphasis on building up your one-to-one contact channels with specific markets, and that's like a lot of that is prep work too that you could be doing when you're not touring, and like that's going to be a natural extension of kind of how we're recommending to do things here. If you are starting to get established, or you have a tour route where people are coming out like a lot, then I think the emphasis is going to be on creating that one-to-one communication to make your marketing job much easier and much more predictable. And then if you're huge, like you can use like the straight, like if you've got a sizable audience, you can use straight up like ticket funnels and just crush.
Yeah,
so there's a lot that can be done at like every stage. Obviously it sucks more for us who are just starting out, but to like the goal I think here is to build a predictable system rather than like, I think, with the previous training, it's more campaign approach. Whereas like you have the potential to show indies how it can string along like an entire, 3-year like run of building up your touring.
Yeah. And ideally that's what I'm hoping to bring forth.
Hell yeah. Well, my first training that I'm going to be doing, I guess I'm doing 3 trainings this year, most likely. But the first one is going to be a WordPress building training. I think a lot of indies, we get them like started on whatever they can get started on. Sometimes that's Squarespace. If they listen to me, sometimes it's ClickFunnels, or it's Shopify, or it's Bandzoogle, or any platform that makes it kind of easier for you to build a website. But like the ultimate goal is to be on a custom build and you have like a dedicated dev team, but before that, for a significant period of time, you can have a WordPress site, and there's just so much development on WordPress that it makes you can figure it out. It is confusing. It can be a pain in the ass, but my hope is that we provide like a set of instructions that you can just walk through and kind of have like a manageable build that doesn't throw off too many errors and stuff.
Yeah, I know that that is in high demand, I'm sure, amongst the indies because of just how much we've name dropped WordPress, and I feel like it's been kind of this monster that a lot of us haven't been able to understand.
Yeah.
Since we kind of have been talking about it.
Yeah. And I mean, my goal with this training is to have it be much more like a skill builder so that because if we were to just be like, here's what we recommend for your WordPress build, it'd kind of be like, we get a lot more questions.
Right.
So I kind of want to build it as like, all right, here's installing WordPress. Here's all the different hosts that you can choose. This is the one I recommend. And like, here's how to do that. And then connecting your domain. And then it's like, all right, you probably need like a drag and drop builder. So we go over all the builders that you could use and which ones are fastest and kind of easiest. And then we walk through kind of like the entire WordPress architecture, like how to get around in WordPress, things you need to know, plugins we recommend. And then your kind of like ground floor builds. So that's like, okay, we'll set you off with the ability to sell products, the like traditional homepage, but like much better than the average music industry homepage. And then even like, posting and recurring content on your website. And, my goal is to build something that gets indies with a functional WordPress website in the short term, but in the long term, perhaps as an additional module later on or as its own training, something about building a membership site and not having to use like Patreon or whatever other membership platform that kind of takes a big chunk.
That's awesome. I love to hear all that just because, again, I feel like these two areas are really big question marks, especially for a lot of indies, especially membership areas. And, we often talk about membership areas as an eligible kind of ascension experience that we can provide for our fans. And we're really in short supply in the marketplace, it would seem, in terms of having a membership kind of builder or platform that actually adheres to our kind of non-negotiables in terms of tracking and customizability and trackability, just LTV and everything that we're always talking about. So if we can start providing that, I think a lot of people will be really relieved.
Yeah. And so, yeah, like these are the first two trainings that you'll see coming out from us. Now, obviously, the reason that releasing a training schedule is tricky is because these things are in development. All types of unplanned things happen in development, especially with such a small team that we are. But our team's growing and we feel confident that we can hit these deadlines. So the goal is to have Jesse's first training, selling tickets for live shows, out by June. And then right after that, my training for the WordPress build out in July.
Sweet.
Yeah. So like you get two trainings for the average interval of one, right?
Nice.
Yeah. Isn't that rad? So yeah. So kind of looking out a little bit further into the year, you have another sort of training that when we were talking about the development, like kind of roadmap, we had a little bit of trouble defining like this process that very intimately for your own career.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to give you the opportunity to kind of explain this social listening sort of idea and how it's benefited you. So like the processes you've used in your own career that are relevant to this second training you'll be putting out.
Yeah. So, and again, as you mentioned, it is a little tentative in terms of its kind of title per se, but it has to do with sort of our nurturing aspect of our buddy system and our education aspect. I found that it really, those two elements of the buddy system, they're always relevant and they're always happening kind of both in the background and the forefront all the time. And so it's hard to kind of just have this nucleus of a training to explain what those are and what they do and why we should care. And I think that's kind of the aim of this training. So kind of what it's going to talk about is how to sort of be the leader of your own fan community, how to be personable, how to take note of what your fans are into, and really pay attention. And not just that, but also kind of quantify that and convert that into actionable data and let that inspire kind of offer building and voice in your copy, in your ads, in your emails, your page building, your design, kind of gathering all of these sort of qualitative points and doing the work to, seek them out in conversing with your fans, and then actually translating that into, our favorite little word, data, that we can use to do things with.
Yes, for sure. So when I think of social listening and kind of how we use it on our team and how I've used it in the past, I think about sourcing copy from existing customers, existing fans, taking a look at their reviews and kind of their posts about the brand and just say what is the language that they describe this with? What does it mean to their life? And how can I drive that narrative for people who kind of aren't there yet?
Yeah.
But obviously there's a lot more to it. Speaking of the education and the nurturing stage, kind of for anyone listening, reiterate what those entail, and then tell me a little bit about how you can serve those stages with social listening and with even nurturing and education strategies.
Sure. So in our buddy system, which is kind of our map of our fan, business system that we're always trying to build, education is what we typically call the second phase of the buddy system. So it's after they have become introduced to our music, education comes in, and that is where we kind of open the door a little bit more to our world, to these fans that already are kind of warm to what we do, and tell them a little bit how about who we are and what we're all about, and with the eventual intent of getting them into a deeper kind of level of commitment to our permission stage. Now, nurturing is sort of the glue between all of these stages. Nurturing is truly the mechanism, between any two stages in the buddy system, because that is what is making everyone feel pumped about what you're doing, everyone feel, comfortable and safe and, coaxed along to all of your offerings. And so the currency of nurturing, it truly is communication. And digital marketing, in the end, is just kind of a sort of tailored communication by way of all of these different methods that we use, our copy and our emails and everything. It's all just communication. Our videos, right? Our imagery, it's all just communication, trying to guide people along. And so it will really hone in, the training will really hone in on that communication aspect. How can you take note of these exchanges in the comments, or these messages you get, or these replies to emails? How can you prompt these comments and these replies? And, how can you steer conversations, or what can you extract from conversations that give you any sort of insight as to who your target kind of fan really is? With music, it's a super ethereal question. So I think there's a lot of work to be done there to figure that out for us.
Totally. Yeah. And I'm already starting to experience this because I'm my own case study right now in the testing grounds, and I'm relaunching my music career, and I'm starting to meet new fans of mine that I've been able to create through my efforts last year and talk to them. And so thinking of education, for me, education, people always ask what's an education campaign I can run? Should I be using ads? And it's well, not really. Education is something you do before you need to do it. You do it before you need it. So you everything about your online presence should say, okay, here's a world you can dive into, and it should direct people to where they can dive into it. So if it's a YouTube channel, if it's your Instagram profile, wherever you're putting out the most content that gives people context for what they're listening to and who it's from, that's where you need to be sending them so that they can educate themselves, really. Manual education campaigns are very like they're costly in a way where like until you're very successful, it doesn't make sense to run them really.
Yeah.
And so right now I'm just trying to figure out what can my recurring content be for these new fans I'm creating. And by talking to them in Messenger, especially, like I get DMs where like there are these pages and I'm like, man, like here's a person right here who will be willing to tell me anything I need to know to figure out what should I be offering or what should I be putting out there in the world? Why is my music valuable to them? Because I think a lot of people presuppose that they know why it is valuable to their fans or why it would be.
Oh my gosh.
You know, and they don't know at all.
Not at all.
Yeah.
That's super true and really a great point in terms of what I hope to put on display with this training, because you know, it's exactly as you said. Like before, when I first got into Indepreneur as a student, I was like, I'm going to have all of these like pitchfork hipsters just loving my stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like these like 22-year-old, like nerdy music snobs. And it just was not the case at all. It ended up being all of these kind of like ragtag, like hyper creative, kind of like internet meme, creative freaking people.
That's awesome.
And it's really sweet. And it's like, as I've gone through and algorithmically been linked to other people, and like as I've seen my fans' recommendations of other bands and what they like, it's like I've started to see this kind of biome of where I truly occupy culturally for these people. And it's like, that's so invaluable to now know.
And that kind of helps me put a box around it. It's like, okay, the reason that this has to do with nurturing and education is because like the comments of your recurring content, messages that you get from people, and then in nurturing phase, like reply emails and direct messages and like all that kind of stuff. That's where you get these conversations where it's like, what other music do you like? Well, I can use that in my introduction targeting. What products would you like? I can use that in my affirmation stage.
Yeah.
What is a cool free offer for you that you would sign up for? I can use that in permission. So it's like you really like, you can use these stages if you build them out robustly and you're actually spending the time talking to people there. You can learn so much that like helps you in a real tangible, because people think about this data as like it's hard to think of how it's going to help you, right? Like, it, but like, I kind of already knew it. And it's like, not really, not with this level of resolution and not in a way that you can go act on it confidently. But now I think like what makes you really good at quote unquote selling your product as a musician is knowing why people love it,
Yes. Which is a hard question to answer for us.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm definitely learning it through like social listening right now. So yeah, I'm super excited for that training. On that note, I'm going to be refactoring the buddy system this year.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So like the buddy system, for those of you listening who don't know what it is, like basically like, cause I don't want anyone to think like I'm trying to be like some cheesemo, like, marketery guy, like saying like, this is the buddy system. It's our patented system for blah, blah, blah. No, I'm just,
exactly.
This is just it. Like, it's so much easier to talk about concepts when you have a metaphor that people already know. So the buddy system is a way for you to learn all the different stages that your fans will go through in the journey from stranger to like absolute fan in a way that's analogous to like any friendship that you've ever had or any relationship that you've ever had. So that's all it is. We just use these 9 stages. I think it's 9 stages to kind of talk about, okay, well, what this is like when you're talking about a friend. So what would be appropriate in that stage of friendship. And so how to craft your marketing campaigns this way. And then once you know those stages really well, we can hang audience targeting stuff on that. We can hang campaigns on that, and what stage they go in and what's relevant. So it's just like this big scaffolding for everything that we kind of want you to understand in order to be able to market yourself forever. And I think it's inadequate as a training right now. Obviously, we've gotten better at video production since then and audio production. So there's that. But I think also we don't do a good enough job of kind of describing how important it is to understand this. And we don't give you enough context for understanding. We build this scaffolding, but we don't hang enough on it, I think. And so what my goal is with this training revamp is to describe all these stages again in a way that's sort of comprehensive. You completely understand, like, oh yeah, I've been in that stage with a friend or with a significant other before. I know what it's like. And now I know what that stage is defined by in marketing. So I know if people have these qualifications, they're in this stage. And then we can talk about all the campaigns that work for that stage. But furthermore, like what, not just like the campaigns that we've pre-built, but just what any campaign that you might want to run in that stage is going to look like and all the different options you have available. And then hopefully also put out a worksheet with it that is like a matrix of our existing trainings.
Yes.
That says, okay, here's all the trainings that are appropriate for this stage. Here's something you might do if you have a wealth of audience that are in this stage and that kind of thing.
That is absolutely fantastic. It's like, it's like when your parents, you're growing up and your parents are always saying like, don't go here, don't do this, or you're not ready for this. And then you grow up having done everything but listen to them. And then you look back when you're 30, which I am not. You look back when you're 27 and you go, dang, I should have listened to them the whole time. And the buddy system is so like that. It's like I've dived into these trainings kind of with the buddy system and when I was initially getting started, within the back of my mind, but not really like, I wasn't nerding out about the buddy system. I was nerding out about like the video views. And then it really, like, the more I've pressed on with this, the more it's just become like, nah, if you have this instinctual, tactile, like scientific understanding of the buddy system and you are just operating from that, like that is the most evergreen kind of concept throughout this whole thing. And that will guide you. I mean, that will inform your instinct for any campaign you want to run. And it'll make you understand like the layers upon which it rests, through your fan system. And it's just super important. So it will be great to see, having all of these now years behind us, this re-informed kind of approach. I can't wait to see that.
Yeah. And I mean, really the goal is like, if we can teach you this really well, then you can go through our trainings and build these sort of pre-packaged step-by-step campaigns knowing, okay, let's reference back here, right? The reason we selected this audience is because these audiences are appropriate for this stage. The reason that we're using this creative is because if you remember back in this buddy system training, these are the types of the range of creatives that we can use in a campaign like this. And like, by tying it back there, you kind of are, it's like when I first got into writing like for hip hop, I was a biter when I was like 12 years old. When I was 12 years old, I would bite my favorite rappers' verses and pass them off as my own. And I would write them down, and I would learn how to say them like them. And that's how I learned how to write hip hop verses. Is through that repetition. Some really great writers would sit down with their favorite writers and write the books, like copy them on a typewriter. And I think that that's kind of the goal we want. We want to give you the groundwork so that you understand the theory, then run you through some campaigns with our trainings so that you see the theory at work. But the ultimate goal for all of our students is that you're not using the ultimate album launch. You're not using our free post shipping and handling funnel like every time you're at bat. We want you to be able to go and plan your own campaigns and do we want you to be able to do it from scratch, really. We don't want you to have to follow our recipes.
Totally. And I mean, that is ultimately what is best for you, especially in this, I hesitate to say industry, but this practice of, gaining fans. It's an analogy I always use is toasters when I'm talking about marketing, just because it's like the most understandable kind of blasé product. But, it's probably true that selling a toaster, making a funnel to sell toasters, there's some like kind of non-negotiable predictions that always come true. For certain products, it's like, I imagine there's a very easy go of it and it's very predictable. But with music, it's going to come down to you thinking up this weird, complex ascension product, that like only you could think of because your fans are attracted to you and there's only one of you. So like everything about your system has to be unique,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And that's really it. Like it's kind of like, it's the best we've got when it comes to onboarding. Like we want to onboard independent creatives to marketing in a way that they feel like I can do this. Not only can I do it, it's cool to do. It's fun. And like, it's just as fun as the creation of the music. But it's like, we can't do that in a vacuum. We can't do it in a perfect world. This is the best option we got, is to sort of put you on safety rails, teach you like the theory of driving.
Yeah. And
then you can see what driving is like without any real danger. And then you're driving on your own,
That's so true. And it's helped me to get here, but it's taken years to find that confidence for sure.
For sure, yeah. And I mean, now we do it on the team all the time, and you probably have done it in the agency tons of times. Like, here's what is right for this scenario. Like, obviously at the agency level, all of our agency technicians, they know all of these campaigns that we have, like these campaign recipes, but they have to go off script constantly based on the context of where the artist they're working with is at. So
yeah, I've surprised myself for sure, like recognizing like, this is typically a permission thing that we would do here, but we're actually going to sideline to ascension here, potentially, oftentimes with success.
Yeah. Yep. It's my hope that with this buddy system Redux, we are laying that foundation a lot better so that people know when they're going through these trainings, kind of what the plan is. Like, look, you're going to do this, the paint by numbers kind of thing at first, but you need to see how it ties back to what you learned. So I'm very excited for that. And to help that, we're also going to be changing up the ultimate album launch. Now that might be towards the tail end of this year. It might be early next year, or it might be even earlier than either of those options. It really depends on how I'm able to ship these other two trainings. Cause I just dropped the messenger marketing update, but what I want to do with Ultimate Album Launch is to sort of take it off of safety rails a little bit, because I think a lot of people they try to run it to spec pretty fervently, and no one ever actually runs it to spec. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And so it's like, if you're not going to run it to spec, we might as well just teach you the skill of launching something so that you don't have to constantly modify this thing in a way that's not going to work. Now that said, like the ultimate album launch to spec works for a lot of people, even when they go off script, even when they do things a little bit differently. But we want it to be that like no one ever runs a launch inappropriately, which is kind of an unintended side effect of having released that training, is that some people go right for ultimate album launch.
It's true. I mean, it goes back to the importance of the buddy system is like, I think the tricky thing that may steer people wrong about the album launch at current is that it seems like this one size fits all way of taking someone from intro to affirmation in like a month. But realistically, there's a lot of kind of marinating in between these stages that usually lubricates what eventually is an album launch.
Totally.
So, yeah, I'm totally hearing you on this.
I would say the average, we can see it play out in the data of our students, is that like on average, people who have successful launches trend towards a longer career span than those who have unsuccessful ones. Now that's not, there are outliers. There's our agency technician, Ed Isola of the 502s, who, his band's debut album, like they had a successful launch and then they toured Europe. But that's not the norm.
For sure.
Yeah. So yeah, basically the way we want to refactor it is to change it into like how to launch. So it's like, cause people always ask like, can I use the launch method to launch a single? It's like, yeah, you could. Can I use the launch method to launch like a new t-shirt? Yeah, sure. Can I use something other than ClickFunnels? Sure. But it's all context dependent. I can't give you specific, like I can guarantee you that if you meet the qualifications for the ultimate album launch, it will have the result based on your tier, but I can't guarantee you that if you change it up, it's going to do this or that. So I'd rather change it to a skill builder instead of like a checklist style training, to where like people really start to feel confident in building their own launches from scratch.
Yeah, I think that's really good. Because that's becoming increasingly relevant, is like, well, like I think people's responses are like, oh, well, now I got to go get an 8-song record at least before I can do this. And it's like,
hey, that's the right.
And it's
already
like,
no.
right. Like, nah, like you could make and actually be better for it. Like you should make like custom lava lamps and then think about, like how do I launch these? Or, how do I write, a 30-minute, like a single track that's 30 minutes long, and how do I tie this into this narrative and these other things? I mean, the more unique you get, and the more instinct you get for applying that uniqueness to marketing is going to be what really sets you off, I think.
For sure, yeah. So I'm hoping to have that out in the tail end of 2020, and hopefully it has that effect of making people feel a lot more confident in building something kind of their own, and also raising the standards a little bit and saying like, here's some more clarified prerequisites for doing this or that style launch and what you should expect out of it. And then obviously having better video quality.
Yeah, always good.
Yeah. And then in terms of free resources, we do have a couple things to announce before we get out of here. Number one is for those in the group who already know this, like this isn't news to you, but for a lot of people, this may be news, is that I've been working on a Facebook ads guide for like, I want to say it's like 2 months now. It was intended to be released as like a free resource alongside Messenger marketing training update, but ultimately kind of grew a little bit. What the goal of it is to say in any training, instead of kind of rehashing in every single training we build, how to maybe test or launch, an ad campaign. We could just point to this guide and it would kind of give you all the sort of information you need to do that. And as it turns out, it just turned into like, all right, here's everything that you need to know as a beginning advertiser in Facebook ads. It's grown to like, I want to say it's up there like 60, 70 pages right now. It's pretty long.
Amazing.
But it's almost done. Yeah. So with that, we're going to be releasing that for free to pretty much everybody. So it's not really Facebook ads for musicians. It's Facebook ads, and like, there's like a lot of my examples are for musicians. So there's a lot of context in there for creatives, but ultimately like it's no frills, no holds barred, like everything that I kind of know. And Jack, pitched in as well. And so I'm very excited to release that because it's going to be something we can point to over and over again, and people can really get an understanding of any concept that we might reference. And it's got like a glossary of terms and stuff, but we're going to be releasing that as a text version without a designed like PDF to our existing subscribers and members first. And then we're going to get it designed into a PDF and release it to the general public this year. So I'm very excited about that. And that should be coming in Q1, like, by the end of March, at least for the text version. And then soon after that, the fully designed version.
I can't wait to pour a cup of tea and read that whole thing.
Yeah, it's definitely worth it, man. I put everything into it. And then, the other free resources I wanted to talk about was that so Jesse not only has gone from agency technician to account manager to coach for Indie Founder, but he is also taking on a role on the team that came with our sort of like organizational restructuring this year, which is called The Future. And this role has to do with the fact that like the lifeblood of our company is more better new ideas constantly about how to build it and monetize an audience for independent creatives. And so if a new technology is out there that gives us more marketing capability, we need to know about it. We need to be running tests on it. Previously, this was done with our own testing grounds artists, and the agency has been a wellspring of new ideas. But we decided, like, let's put some money and some like technician time on this task this year in a real dedicated way. So Jesse is the future. He's going to be that wellspring of new ideas.
Yeah, that's such a. I need a little name tag.
Or like a shirt, yeah, or a uniform. And so the free resources that Jesse's going to be putting out are just test reports, case studies on tests that are being run on kind of everything out there, like anything new that could be used for marketing your own creativity. We're going to test it out, or rather Jesse's going to test it out.
Yeah, I mean, geez, it's such a Wild West, and I feel like we've thankfully been able to give people things to hold on to, but there's just in this realm of things, but there's always new things to check out and wrangle in and apply to the buddy system. So I hope to do that.
Yeah. So for those of you out there who have been wondering about, TikTok marketing and Snapchat ads and Twitter ads and, anything that you could want to know about Spotify ads, we're going to put it to the test quite literally, and we're going to put budget behind it. And we're going to basically provide all of our research to anyone who wants to read it. So I'm very excited for that.
Yeah, me too. It's going to be a crazy world out there, but I'll do some experiments and come back
for
with
sure.
some results.
Hell yeah. Well, yeah, that's our training schedule. So like the first trainings you're going to see from I or Jesse is in June, and then we'll be dropping heat all the rest of the year. As for the ad guide, that should be out actually much sooner. And then next week, Corinne and Jack will be on here to talk about their trainings for the next year, and I'm very excited.
Me too. Can't wait to hear it.
Yeah. So thank you so much for joining us, Jesse. We hope to see you again soon on this here podcast.
Oh, thank you. I love doing this. I love now being here. I feel like I've always been a student, and it's great to just continue being a student, but with the benefit of helping everybody else along the way.
For sure, dude. It's great to have you. And we'll see the rest of you indies out there next week on Creative Juice. Peace out.